Divine Truth Assistance Group. These group assistance sessions are about putting principles of divine truth into action. This discussion is part of the 2014 Australia Group 1 series. Jesus Gives Personal Truth to Joy Harris and Neena Love. Recorded on the 14th of July 2014 in Monkerai, New South Wales, Australia.
Okay, how's everyone? Are we settled? Yeah? G'day. How are you girls feeling? Nervous? You'll have to remember to use the mic.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, now what we've done today is we had a bit of feedback issues with the other microphones, so we're just going to try using these mics instead. But it's a bit of a hassle for the person who's there because you've only got one arm to gesticulate about your feelings. Okay. Okay, so we're here with Neena and Joy because you've both actually, probably unbeknownst to each other, asked the same question. So what was the question? Can you remember the question?
I wanted to purify my desire so that I could ultimately know who my soulmate is.
Right, so the real question was you wanted to know who your soulmate was, yeah?
And mine was, what blocks and things do I need to remove to attract my soulmate?
Yeah, so very similar questions, right? So let's go through it. Now, I just wanted to say to you ladies that we've had discussions about this many times before, have we not?
Yes.
And do you recognise that?
Yes.
In fact, I have actually a recording of one of my discussions with you on video where you said to me, I feel like I have a really strong desire to see my soulmate. And I said to you, no, you don't at all. You don't have a desire at all to see your soulmate. And you said, yes, I do. You remember that?
It was actually, I said, you went through a talk of, the start of the talk was, what you have is what you want.
Yes.
And by the time I got up there, you said, do you want your soulmate? And I sort of rolled my eyes and went, obviously not.
Yeah, obviously not, even though you felt like you do.
Yeah.
And both of you still have the feeling that you do. And all I can say to you both is that you don't have a feeling of wanting to be with your soulmates.
I guess the real question I realised is why don't I want my soulmate?
Well, let's firstly go through what we've learnt so far in these assistance groups. If we think about the first day, if we look at the first talk that I gave, which was about desire, generating desire for personal change, what were the three main things that you can remember from that?
I've gone blank.
It was, it was how we used our time, how we used our will,
and desire for truth.
And a desire for truth. Yeah. Okay, so you girls think you're desiring truth, but whenever you receive it, there's no real change in your life with regard to the soulmate issues. So first thing, we remember the reason why we wanted to do that was we needed to measure ourselves. So we need to measure reality. So the first thing I would like to do with you is to give you a reality check. Now, a reality check in this case is, for 5 years that I've known you for close to 5, and Neena for longer. For the time that I've known you, you've always asked this question. And yet for that entire 5 years, I've not yet seen you attract your soulmate. So if we go by measuring the results of your actions, can you see that the first thing we've got to come to terms with is that we obviously have not dealt with anything that would attract our soulmate. Otherwise, our soulmates would have probably been attracted to us by now. Does that make sense? And we need to come to terms with that. So that's number one. Come to terms with the fact that you have not done any work on attracting your soulmate, because otherwise they'd already be here. So the result is telling you the truth. Now, over that time, you've asked me many questions, and I've usually responded with three main answers. Can you remember what those answers have been? So you've asked me many questions about why you haven't attracted your soulmate yet.
Yes.
And I've given you three main answers every single time, pretty much. Can you remember what those three main answers were?
I've got a lot of fear.
About what?
Relating back to my father and how he created a lot of terror in me.
Yes, that's one thing I've mentioned.
Yep.
Yep. What else have I mentioned to you?
That I'm angry.
Yes, but we're talking about the one things I've mentioned to you in relationship to the man in particular, because obviously your soulmate's male and you know it's male. So what have I said to you primarily? Let's go through, to help you, let's go through yesterday and today. So yesterday, what did we talk about? Can you remember?
Gosh, I've gone really blank.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
The three selves.
We talked about ourselves, understanding ourselves, and we went through in particular the facade self.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we said that would be really, really hard to undo.
Yes.
The facade
One of the
self.
hardest things that we will ever do is undoing our facade self.
And one thing I've talked to both of you is you love your facades.
Okay.
You both love your facades. And we've talked about that with you quite often, how much you love your facade. The question I have for you is, why do you love it so much? Because it's not bringing your soulmate to you.
Right.
So the question is, why do you love it so much? So what do you get out of the facade that you're putting out there?
At the moment, I've become aware of how attached I am to my comforts.
Right.
So I get to stay comfortable.
So you get to stay comfortable?
Yeah.
Is it really comfortable? You're without your
No,
soulmate?
because I'm in a lot of pain under that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not really comfortable. It's just it just is a managing.
It's superficial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And for yourself, Jo?
I'm addicted to feeling good and looking like I'm feeling good and looking like I've got it together and
Good.
looking like I know everything and
Yep. All those things.
all those things.
Okay. So that's one area that's really big for
Yes.
both of you, is maintaining the facade. Mm-hmm. And in the whole time I've known you, there hasn't been a strong desire in both of you to give it up. Right, so that is one area I'd really sincerely look at, your will to give up your facade. Mm-hmm. So you're very frightened about giving up your facades. Otherwise, you would probably, after 5 years, have given them up. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. We've talked about them quite frequently. So the fact that you haven't given them up means that you're very attached to them. And that usually, this kind of strong attachment to a facade is caused by fear. So fear is the emotion you don't want to feel.
Yeah.
You're both avoiding your fears greatly, of course. So there is going to be a need to give up this facade. So that's first. Now, the third thing we've mentioned to you, and myself and Mary have both mentioned these things to you, is the issue of your addictions. And there's one primary addiction in particular that we've referred to, that we've mentioned to both of you. Do you remember what that is?
Well, for me, that what I recollect would be my need to want the man to support me and to be there for me and
and
do
who's
everything
the
for me.
primary person who feeds this addiction for you?
My son.
Your son.
Yes.
Which son? If
Scott.
be more specific.
Yep.
Yeah, but which son in terms of the
he's
order?
my second son.
He's your second son.
Well, second son on earth.
Okay. Now we've talked to you about you had created his feeling to do this in him purposefully, so that you could get the addiction met.
Yes.
Through him.
Yeah. Yes, I made him the special child.
Yes.
And for that wanted certain things from him.
Yes. Yes. And what do you also want, Joy, from men generally, if you think about it?
Approval is the most general one. Approval.
Yeah, that's not what I see.
I want them to do what I want them to do.
Correct. You want them to do what you want them to do, and you see that as them loving you.
Yes, I do.
Right, so this is one of the things. Now, remember what I've spoken to you about this issue. Who is the primary addiction in your life with regard to males?
Yeah. Okay. Soul.
Soul, your son.
Yeah.
Yep. So, by the way, Neena's son's name is Soul, so don't get it all mixed up.
S-O-U-L.
His name is Soul. And he has become your way of getting most of your male-based addictions met. Right? And he's pretty safe to deal with, isn't he? Because he's your son and you've groomed him.
Yeah.
You're the one who've groomed him all the way through your life to take on this role. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And both of you do not want to give up this addiction. All right? This addiction. Now, if you don't give up that addiction, you will never find underneath it the actual emotion of pain that causes you to repel your soulmates. Because most of these painful emotions are being suppressed by what the guys, and particular what your second son and what your only son does for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And as a result, what they do for you, basically what you've done is you've created a surrogate soulmate in your son. And it's quite a destructive relationship for that reason, because it's a surrogate, a replacement. And it also is a replacement for the feelings that you feel or that you want to avoid. And so the feelings that you feel are very much focused on trying to avoid these feelings of not having your soulmate with you, not having the other half of you with yourself, and more feelings associated with men in particular, the pain that you have with men from your own childhoods. And so you've created a child that you then groomed to make your own pain from your own childhood go away. Does that make sense? And then you've entered an addiction with them that's quite abusive, actually, and you don't even see it as abusive. You see it, I love my son, he's so wonderful, he's such a good son, he does all these things for me, I just love him, and they become your favourite person. So if you think about who's your favourite person on the planet, for you the answer would probably be Soul.
Yeah, that's true.
And for you the answer would probably be your son, right?
Yes, I guess that's true. I'm not going to argue that.
You haven't thought that before, though, have you?
No, I haven't realised that.
But if you think about it, he's the one who responds to most of your addictions. He's the one that feeds most of your desires.
But I don't like that anymore.
I agree, but you haven't yet been willing to give it up.
Right.
Yeah. So this is an issue. You will need to face that particular issue. Now, from the session today, we talked a bit about, Mary talked with you about what is one of the first things you're going to have to emotionally realise. So what's the first thing you're going to have to emotionally realise? Can you remember?
Is that it's a sin.
Yeah, that it's actually destructive.
And start to investigate the damage that it actually does.
Correct.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you could do to help you start on this process of actually opening up to your soulmates, which is going to be a process of having to deal with some causal emotional hurt from your own childhoods with regard to men. So that's where it's going to have to go.
So it's not just the father?
Who's your father?
Yeah.
No, because your mother would have had attitudes towards men that you've also imbibed. So this is about your feelings towards men that came into you during your childhood years.
Yep, that
and
makes
it's your
sense.
feelings towards men that came into you during your childhood years that are now frozen. Remember from Mary's talk to you that the hurt child is frozen at that age, that are actually preventing you from attracting your soulmates.
So I feel in my case, my mother really had some very big emotions with men. So
Correct.
I've likely inherited, or not likely, that's an in utero thing then.
Of course, all of your mother's emotions primarily enter you in utero. They go through you after the time of conception. And if mothers knew that, they would be very, I think, much more motivated to deal with some of their own emotions. But unfortunately, you see, many women, what they do is they're very angry with men, right? And then what they do is they have a female daughter, a daughter who enters their womb, and of course all of these emotions about men enter that daughter because they're the same gender generally as the. So in this case, the daughter is in utero, so she's the same gender as her mother, and all of her mother's emotions are much more open to flowing because they're mostly feminine-based emotions to the opposite gender. So those emotions start entering the person quite a lot, right? If it was a male in utero, then he would be feeling attacked, he'd be feeling unwanted, unneeded, or he'd be feeling all the rage, and under those circumstances, he might even miscarriage. So sometimes you find that they can't even carry the child full term because the child's already wanting to be out of there, right? But let's say the child's carried full term, you, the daughter, and your mother's got all this rage towards men. She's already attracted a man who she can boss around and manipulate and control, right? Or she's attracted a man who's like her dad, who she couldn't boss around and manipulate and control, she's angry with. One of those two things, because she's not going to attract any other, right? And then as a result, her rage builds up, and all that rage enters the child, or all the fear enters the child. It just depends on what emotion. I'm just giving you some examples. And then so you might have had a nice dad, and yet a mum who's really angry with men, and it might be your mum's emotion that entered you that justifies the repulsion of men. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this is what you've got to work out. Think about your childhood and think about the kind of emotions your mum had towards men in your childhood.
Yeah.
What did she demonstrate to you in your childhoods? It's your childhood hurt that prevents the attraction to your soulmate. Right? But the facade has to be given up. There has to be a will to engage the process. There has to be this addiction with your sons needs to be confronted properly inside of yourself, and that will help you get to the pain that's causing you to repel, to keep away your soulmates. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And if you listen tomorrow to the talk that I'm going to give you tomorrow, which is about repentance and forgiveness relationships, it'll help you identify what relationships you've got to repent for creating, and that is the relationship with your sons, which you have not yet repented for creating. In fact, at this stage, you're quite happy you created it because it gives you a lot of fulfillment. In fact, it's the only relationships that actually provide you with all those things that you really, really want, right? And then you will also have to look at the forgiveness relationship, which is the relationship with both your mother and your father that created these emotions in your childhood. And that's a lot about the hurt that exists within. Now, if you're unwilling to go through that process, and to be frank with both of you, you have been desperately unwilling to go through that process. Right?
I relate to the word desperate.
Desperate because there's so much addiction in it, right, to not go through the process. There's a lot of pain in you about these things, and you're desperately unwilling to go through the process at this stage. And that's the reason why you have not attracted the other half, right? Now, assuming he's in really, really good condition, he's not going to be attracted. But if he's in also really, really bad condition, he's not going to be attracted because of the emotions either way. Now, to give you an indication of how much you're fighting these emotions, the soulmate attraction is the strongest attraction in the universe between yourself and another person. That's the strongest attraction that that is present, that God created. Now, if you're repelling your soulmate, it means there must be a lot of
big emotions in there.
Resistance, yeah. That's what it means. So see, most people don't think of it that way. You know, how they think of it, go, oh, maybe if I just deal with one thing more, it'll all be resolved and I'll attract my soulmate. It's not like that at all. You're going to have quite a lot of things to deal with to attract your soulmate, because the reality is, if you haven't already attracted your soulmate, it means there must be a lot of repulsion going on. Does that make sense? A lot of repulsion. Now, I had to come to terms with this myself, right? I had to come to terms with that. Oh, I'm always thinking about my soulmate. I always want my soulmate with me. I had a terrible feeling of missing my soulmate. And in fact, that was one of the repulsions. The actual feeling.
The need.
The need, it was an addiction. So I had to remove that. So I had to go through a lot of grief, which was, in our case, because we had a separation, there's more grief than what you could probably imagine at this point associated with a soulmate relationship. And so I had to go through all that grief. So I spent a lot of years grieving. So in my case, I spent over 3 years grieving almost every day, right? And when I say almost every day, usually, as I've explained to people, it's lasted me sometimes from 2 to 4 hours every day, grieving. Now, you won't have to deal with that much, right? Anywhere near that much. But at this stage, you both need to become aware that you are repelling your soulmates, because the natural attraction is for your soulmate to be drawn to you, right? That's how God created it to be. The fact is, if my soulmate's not drawn to me, I must be repelling them. And this is where you need to start with reality, like say, okay, I must be repelling them. What emotions in me are repelling them, right? And if you have a look at the addictive relationships with your sons, you will actually start identifying a lot of those emotions, because a lot of the emotions are actually present in this addiction that you created. And in fact, you created these addictions with your sons, both of you. And you've got to see it as actually a creation that you purposely did in order to avoid a lot of personal pain. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Albeit without awareness.
I don't agree that you weren't aware, no. No, see, these are things we like to tell ourselves when we're in our addiction. We like to say, we come first, when we become first intellectually aware of an addiction, we often go, oh, but I didn't know.
Right.
And I'm going, I don't think you can say that. If you have a good look at your life, you can see how much you've become reliant on these boys, how much you've desired from them, how upset you get when they don't give you what you want. Like, if you're really honest with yourself, there's so much going on, and they actually believe they're doing you a great service. They are now so damaged about this that they believe that their closest relationship is you, And that's not true either, isn't it? So you've actually taken them away from their soulmates in the process. And this is about coming to terms with the actual enormity of what happens when you avoid an emotion inside of yourself. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, if you don't do those things, we're going to have another talk in 5 years' time about the fact that you still haven't attracted your soulmates, even though you think you desperately want them. See, at the moment, I would suggest to you, you don't desperately want them even. What you want, because if you desperately wanted them, you'd deal with some of these emotions. What you want is to slowly disengage. This is what your real feelings are. I'll slowly disengage the other men in my life, and at the same time, my soulmate will come along, and I won't have to go through any pain in the interim. That's really what you want, all right? And for that reason, you sexually projected other men frequently. You know you do. You sexually projected other men frequently. You know you do. Because this is all about, sharing the emotions you're missing, right? And my feelings are on that matter, what you need to do is stop some of these addictions with men. Stop getting them to do what you want. Stop getting your sons to give you all these emotions that you feel you need from them. Initially, they're going to think, what's wrong with my relationship? Because you've created them to actually want to do it.
Yeah.
So they're even going to be a bit like, they're going to be a bit at sea initially because they're used to the codependence in the relationship now, right? And you can, at that time, if they ask you, you just explain, this is what I'm trying to do because I want to attract my soulmate, and instead of having a soulmate surrogate in you, I want to have my soulmate now, and I want to deal with all my addictions that I've got.
It's also
with you.
about soul's happiness as well, ultimately.
It is a lot about his happiness because at the moment you can't let him go, and in terms of an emotional letting go, and as a result, he's never going to fully connect to his soulmate ever, right? And you know that his soul attraction is probably female as well, so that just adds to the issue, doesn't it? The fact that his soul attraction is female and you're a female and he's not letting you go, how is he ever going to have a proper relationship with a woman?
Yeah.
He's never going to have one. He's always going to revert back to mummy, right? And this has already damaged his life, and that's a part of seeing the truth of what you've created, why you've created it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So there's a number of issues I've raised, and if you think about it, all I've done is gone through the actual blockages that have been there. So firstly, you're scared of the emotions involved, right? You have no faith that if you do it God's way, things are going to get better, really, because if you did, you would have already done it. You would have already given up your sons as the surrogate, and you would have already gone through some of these addictions. You also have had a very little will to do it, and the demonstration of that lack of will has been the fact that you still retain the addiction. Right? There's been little focus on addressing the addiction, which is the addiction, the codependent addiction with men. You love to get sexual feelings from men, and you love to get feelings that you have control of men, and these kind of codependent addictions are destroying they are repelling your soulmate from ever coming into your life. And then just ponder about the last thing that I said, and that was that if the soulmate attraction is the greatest attraction on this planet and you haven't yet attracted your soulmate, there's got to be some pretty big emotions preventing the attraction. Now, that doesn't need to frighten you. That's just there, right, which it did for you, Neena, in particular. That's just there to remind you of how much you're repelling them, how much you're pushing them away.
Or how much fear there actually is.
Well, that might be one of the emotions, but it's not the only one.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of sexual addictions going on with men where you project sexually at them and you want them to notice you sexually. And so you'll find through the investigation of the addictions that there'll be all sorts of things that you didn't even consider. So at the moment, you think you know what it's about, but until you go through the emotions, you won't really know what it's about. So my suggestion is to start with that intellectual awareness of the sin, start with the intellectual awareness of the damage it does, start with the intellectual awareness of what's God's laws about these principles and whatever, develop within you a desire to do it differently, and then focus heavily on what are my addictions here that keep me in my facade, with men. What do I really feel about men? What do I really want from them? Why do I want those things from them? What's going on? You're going to need to address those particular questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, when you address those questions emotionally, you will actually start going through some of the hurt child's feelings. Once you start processing through the hurt child's feelings, then healing your soul can begin to occur. And I'm not talking about your son's soul, I'm talking about your soul.
Well, both really, I guess.
But he will also start to have feel the effects. But in the process of feeling the hurt, you'll find you're removing the barriers to the natural attraction to your soulmate. Does that make sense? So you basically, imagine for a moment that you're there and I'm here and I'm your soulmate, and in between there's like all these concrete blocks. And those concrete blocks are your emotions. Does that make sense to you? Now, when you and are emotions that are causal or related to your childhood, when you pick up one of these blocks and actually process it and get out the jackhammer and jack it out and bash it out and let yourself feel all of it and release it, then there's one less concrete block between you and your soulmate.
Whether we're together or not.
Whether you're together or not,
Yeah.
there's one less block.
Yeah.
And then you lift out another one. Now, eventually, you might have to even lift out all of the blocks, because eventually, because this is such a strong attraction between yourself and your soulmate, what will happen is there'll be enough blocks removed for you to actually attract your soulmate. And then you'll have to look at all the rest of it, what's left over. Does that make sense? You'll have to go through what's left over in your relationship, and that's where you'll get angry and frustrated with him and annoyed with him, and you get really bitter with him sometimes, and he might do the same with you, and you'll have to work through these issues as well if you really want to have a close relationship. So the first phase is removing enough of the blocks to even just attract him into your life, and then the second phase is removing the rest of the blocks so that you can actually love him.
Right.
Instead of just expecting him or expecting the job that he loves you.
Well, expecting him to be a solution.
Which he won't be, of course.
No.
In fact, he might add to your problems.
Yeah.
Because you have additional addictions and he will have addictions, and so you're going to have an escalation of the problems for a short period of time until he realises that he needs to do the same things you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? If he hasn't already realised that. Does that make sense?
It does.
So that's the steps to take from here. Now, what I want to make very clear to you, you have been unwilling to take these steps.
Mm-hmm.
So honour the fact that you've been unwilling. It's not a judgment, it's just a statement of a fact. We have proof because the soulmate attraction is the strongest attraction, and yet you haven't attracted them. Mm-hmm. Now that applies, doesn't it, to the majority of our audience probably. Most of you know that you've not yet even attracted a partner, let alone a soulmate. So this tells me lots of blocks going on, right? Lots of barriers, concrete blocks, if you like, which are all emotional between yourself and the attraction. So it's like for the average person, we've put lots and lots of blocks in between ourselves and our soulmate, which should be a natural attraction. If there were no blocks, we probably would have met them when we were 7, 8, 10, when we were very young. We would have met them automatically because it's such a strong attraction. God created it to be the strongest attraction. The fact that it's not the strongest attraction in our lives means that there must be lots of blocks. Now, sure, some of those blocks are his, but you can't do anything about that. The rest of the blocks are yours. And honestly, if you remove most of your blocks, he will come anyway, whether he's got blocks or not. That's how it works, right? He will be drawn anyway, because whether he's got blocks or not.
And I'll be feeling a lot better and happier in general anyway.
Of course. And also your own sons, who you've had your surrogate relationship with, will now be free to have a relationship with their own soulmates, which is one of the really important things to remember in all of this. Because while you're attempting to get all of your addictions met through that relationship, I know it feels bad, but there's still an attempt to get the addictions met through the relationship. While you're doing that, what's happening is that you are really preventing them from engaging their real relationship as well. So that's one of the compensatory effects of what you've created. So does that all make sense to?
I found that helpful.
Yeah?
It's just you've made it really clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel so too.
Yeah.
Especially after these last 3 days.
Exactly. So after the last 3 days, you've been much more open now to this conversation.
Yes.
If you think about it, I have said almost everything I've just said to you before, but you have not been very open to hearing it. And Mary has spoken to at least yourself, I know, Joy, a couple of times about these issues, and I know you haven't been very open to hearing it from a woman either. So there's some issues there. But this is what frequently happens. What frequently happens is a person thinks they want to change in their life, but actually the actions of their last 4, 5, 6 years of life are demonstrating that actually still what they want is the addiction to be met, even though it's not satisfying. That's the sad thing about all this. Like and then, can you see the frenzy in it? Like it's like a frenzy because it's not satisfying, but we still go for it. And while we're going for it, we're repelling the real thing.
It's like the mouse on the wheel.
It is like the mouse on the wheel, going around madly, not getting anywhere. Yeah, it's exactly like
addictions.
That. Yeah. So that's what I would do if it was me in your situation. I have been in your situation, so that's what I had to do. I had to do all of these things. It took me, as I said, dealing with some really deep hurt for quite a number of years, and I actually got to a point eventually where I realised that I'm probably getting close, to actually meeting her, and because I could feel that I'd actually dealt with a lot of the reasons why she wouldn't have been attracted in the first place. Right? In the end, I had a whole heap of emotions, and Mary had a whole heap of emotions that were completely almost the counter opposites to each other. In other words, what I liked a woman to be, Mary was completely the opposite. And what she wanted a man to be, I was completely the opposite. Does that make sense? And as a result of that, it's like all this repulsion from both ends of the soul. And all of those things have been established through addiction and through childhood hurt and us avoiding all of those things. Now, as soon as one of you start making those changes, then the other person can't help but be drawn, even though they might not like what they see when they meet you. So let's say you do all of that work.
And then he goes, yuck.
Exactly. What are you going to feel then?
Yuck.
Well, you're going to have to feel some things, aren't you? You're going to have to feel through the addiction that you wanted him to feel that you're good.
Or that he liked,
Or that he would like what he saw in the end.
Yeah.
You see? And I had to do all of that too. Had to go through all that. So I met Mary, and then I realised she didn't like me very much. Or it'd be more correct probably to say she didn't like a lot of the things that I did very much. Right? And as a result, I got a lot of rejection. I can remember sitting down once in a restaurant with her. Mary was terminating our relationship. She said, I don't mind being a friend with you, but I'm just not attracted to you at all. I don't find you sexually attractive at all. And I walked away from that I spent another 4 weeks, 6 weeks after that crying, right? And once I worked through it all, I realised, actually, this was a lot about me, actually, my feelings about me. So I started feeling some feelings about me, and after I felt a few of those feelings about me, I thought, she's going to call me, hey? I know she is. I could feel it, Sure enough, 2 days later, gives me a call. Oh, can I revise what I said to you before? But I had to work through a lot of things about me. This is the case. You're going to have to work through a lot of things about you in this process, about how you feel about yourself and what you're expecting a man to make you go away in terms of what you feel about yourself. Right? And the desperation in the need for your soulmate is driven a lot by this terrible feeling that there are things that are bad about yourself that you have to change. Yeah, and that's all going to get triggered as well in this process. But it's a good thing. Yeah. So that sound... You got any more questions, girls, about it? Or?
No, I think that's great for the time being. Thank you very much.
Yeah. How about yourself, Neena?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm happy to answer any if you have any.
What an
mind.
opportunity.
Can you see over the last few days we've given you a lot of techniques and a lot of, I suppose you could say, not so much processes, but an idea of what you're going to have to do if you're really going to confront this particular emotion. Yeah, and so I feel that if you add that to tomorrow, which will be a lot about these addictive relationships that occur due to what I'm calling repentance and forgiveness relationships, for lack of another term, then I think you have a very good, if you like, library of information that will help you deal with this particular desire that you say you have.
Put it to the test.
Yeah, because the reality is you can say you have it, but if you're unwilling to go through developing the will, and you're unwilling to go through getting to your hurt child, and you're unwilling to go through, dealing with your addictions and your facade, then I suggest to you don't really have a desire. Yeah. You'd like to say some things, mate, babe? You want to come and sit on my lap and say them? Yeah.
You good? Now I am, yeah. No, I was just going to say that... now I'm blocking you. There we go.
That's okay.
That it's worthwhile looking at what you really do desire, what you're calling your soulmate desire. What is that really? Because you both sort of feel like, I want my soulmate, but as Jesus pointed out, you don't really. So what do you want?
Well, recently I feel like connected to 3 primary things: loneliness, neediness, and desperation. And this desperation was like extreme. It was so desperate. And I remember saying to someone, is everybody this desperate? Like there was this really...
A lot of people are that desperate, yeah. That's why you have the meat markets that go on in the pubs and the clubs and the... it's like, nobody can...
It was like real, like I was just quite surprised to end up there.
Yeah. But I feel like that's getting you closer to what you want from a guy, from a man. Take away these feelings.
But be more specific.
Yes, what are you desperate for?
Oh, I want to avoid this hole, I guess. Yeah, just this emptiness.
Emptiness, yeah. And I feel like you can get more specific than that as well.
Why don't you start with what are you wanting from the man? What do you want the man to do for you?
I want him...
What does soul do for you?
He comforts me, keeps me company.
So he comforts you?
Yep.
Keeps you company?
Keeps me company.
So you're afraid of being lonely, obviously, then?
Yeah,
What else does he do?
Well, the main thing that stands out is companionship, yeah.
What about your sense of self? How does he feel about
you?
you?
He validates me. Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah. And there's more. Keep going. For either of you.
There's a lot very similar. I've recognised my need for men so that I don't need to feel lonely and that I don't need to feel unloved and that I feel worthy and validated.
Safe.
Safe is
that's a big one. Secure.
Yes, safe and secure.
I feel like if you sat down and let yourself ponder, what are the things that I get from my son? Maybe this is what I'm calling soulmate desire. Maybe soulmate desire is something completely different from this.
And I can assure you it is something completely different from
Well,
all
this
those
is,
feelings.
to purify it now. That's what is needed.
Well, and also deal with the addictions. Like, whose job is it to make you feel safe?
Mine.
Well, I remember that Jesus once said there is no such thing.
No one's job.
No.
God wants us to feel free, not safe. Then we will feel free. Then we will feel safe. won't we?
And also once we fully believe the truth, we will always feel safe.
But what we equate with safety now is an avoidance of truth rather than an embracing of truth.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Can you feel the resistance as soon as
I'm
Mary joined our conversation?
I was just trying to even take in what Mary said just then.
No, you're not.
No.
No. Why?
You're asking me or Joy or both?
Both of you.
I'm guessing it's not something I'm connecting to emotionally, is the way I feel about my own mother and women
so
in
that's
general.
partly what's going on.
Yeah.
So the dynamic of a woman saying to you what you need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of it maybe is like it's just a resistance to truth, like no more. Is that part of it?
No, but there's specific things you are resistive to.
Trusting the woman.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Trusting the woman.
Can I say that for both of you have a major addiction to getting attention and approval from the man? Right. So when you're sitting here and you've got Jesus' full attention, his girl isn't on his lap and she's not talking to you, you got it going on. You've got the full attention of the man. And I come and you both have issues with your mums, and then I'm sort of getting some attention as well, and I'm
Mary's getting a lot more attention than you are at the moment. And you feel that, you see. You see, what happens, this is what happens at the soul level. If my soul is engaged with you, just the engagement feeds one of your addictions. This is one reason why I haven't engaged with you much, right? Because just the engagement feeds one of these addictions. You want the man's attention, right? So just the engagement is feeding the addiction. And the problem is I can say a whole heap of words and you're not hearing them. And the reason why you're not hearing it is you're already getting your addiction met. And when you're getting your addiction met, you can't hear anything. Now, when Mary comes and sits on my lap, she's now engaging most of my attention. You've now got no attention coming at you from the man, right? And on top of that, you've got a woman giving you feedback about your soulmate relationship, right? Both those things, two things now. And where's the addiction getting met now? Well, it's not getting met now. So what do? Bang, close down.
That's really specific.
Right? Just close down. I'm not hearing anymore now. I'm not getting what I want in this interaction. Now, this is an indication of our addictions and how they work. If somebody feeds your addiction, right, you have no capacity to hear a single word they're saying.
Because I'm feeling...
Because you're already getting all the nice feelings.
I'm full up almost.
Yeah. So I could just give you attention and then say a whole heap of bad things about you, and you'll just sit there and accept it all because you're already getting the addiction met.
Is that why we put up with abuse?
No, it's a completely different reason why you put up with abuse. What I'm talking about is I'm giving you attention and you like it. And so you don't care what I'm saying. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
You only care about getting
the fact that I'm getting attention.
That you're getting the attention. That's all you care about. And so I'm saying a heap of words, and it's like me going to you.
Can I give my analogy? I forgot about it today.
Go on,
yeah. And I'll tell it to everyone because I was going to say it in the first presentation I gave today. Has anyone seen a lot of The Simpsons, the show on TV? Yeah? Probably. Oh, not many of you. Okay, might be a bad analogy. On The Simpsons, it's the yellow family, and there's the mum and the dad and the three kids, and they have a dog. And the fact that dogs only see in black and white, and we're not really sure that dogs can understand our speech. So occasionally in The Simpsons it'll cut to what the dog is seeing. And all the dog is seeing is the world in black and white and people moving, and there's this garbled sound going on. That's what it feels like to me if I'm meeting an addiction of someone, it doesn't really, if my soul is meeting the addiction, doesn't matter what words I'm saying. Because it's like, whoo, who cares? I'm getting the nice feeling on that side.
Yeah.
And conversely, I can say really kind, direct, loving things to you, but if from a soul perspective you've got an addiction that you want me to meet and I'm not meeting it, whoo, you're going to feel offended.
You'll hate the person's guts, actually.
Yeah.
You just hate them, and you won't even know why.
So we don't hear the words when you're meeting our addiction.
You don't hear the words my presence alone causes you to not hear my words.
Right.
Because I'm a male and your addiction is with men.
And then when the woman speaks the truth, my addiction's not being met, so I don't hear that either.
No.
Right.
What are you doing here, John?
What am I doing here?
Exactly. What are you doing here?
It's getting some attention.
getting some attention.
And there's another one to become aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And this is something that everyone needs to understand about their addictions, that while the addiction is getting met, it's highly unlikely you will even hear what's being said to you. Right? So we notice many interactions between people where they're talking about truth, and really all they're doing is feeding each other's addiction, and you walk away and you go, yeah, they had no idea, but while that addiction is getting met, they're not even hearing each other, and they're just loving each other's company. They think each other's company is wonderful. It's so wonderful to be with that person. I just love that person so much. It's just wonderful. What can I do without that person? I don't know. I don't know what I can do without that person. I'm so glad that person's in my life. And it's all because that person meets the addiction, and it doesn't even matter what the person says.
Now you're talking about one of my other addictions.
Same addiction, isn't it?
Yes.
How's it different?
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
So this is an issue, and so as soon as Mary joined us, because you're now not getting my full attention anymore, and Mary's getting my attention, and Mary's getting my attention a lot of the time. This is what happened as soon as Mary came into my life. Almost every woman who was in my life at that time became extremely violently angry and left. And I'm talking about women who I did not have any relationships with them. I didn't have what I would classify as a friendship with them, right? Even. They were just feeding off of the feelings they were getting from me, and I was obviously allowing that, right? And as soon as my attention focused onto Mary, they just became immensely pissed off, right? And they all left. And now none of them are in my life. Interesting, eh? They all said they wanted divine truth. As soon as Mary came along, none of them wanted divine truth anymore. So what did they really want?
Your attention.
They wanted Jesus' attention. That's what they wanted.
Can I ask Mary what the last thing was that she said?
I can't remember, Joy. Can anyone remember the last thing that I said? Do you remember, darling?
About the blah, blah, blah with the dog.
You mean you mean the feedback around soulmates?
Yes.
That what you think that your soulmate desire is
not a soulmate
desire.
Right.
It's actually
It's an
desire
addiction.
to meet all of your unhealed feelings within yourself. And you feel that so strongly, it's a desperation. Right? And you call that my soulmate longing. I really want my soulmate. That's what you call that.
It's got a sick feeling to it too.
It has, yeah. Well, it's not only a
obsessive.
sick feeling, it's also this feeling of panic almost associated. When am I going to get them? There's terrible sadness associated with it and all those kind of things. That's not the kind of sadness you're eventually going to feel, because all of the sadness you're eventually going to feel is going to be related to your mum and dad and their relationship, and particularly the way women feel about men and the way men treated you. in your childhood. That's the real sadness that you're going to get to feel if you want to unblock this condition, take away the concrete blocks between you and your soulmate.
But at the moment, it's like what I talked about in the second talk today. You haven't yet had, and you mentioned it now, haven't yet had an awareness that what you feel is soulmate desire even is actually sinful. It's an addiction. And the tears that you're having and the so-called longings that you're having is really about, remember in this diagram, it's the emotions that you feel when the addiction is not being met.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason I said that what you feel like now is your soulmate desire, you're going to have to revise that, is because I personally have had to revise my feelings of what a soulmate relationship would entail. I've had many of the same injuries that a man would take away my feelings of sadness, give me a sense of worth, make me feel safe, and they're all things that I'm working through. But as you work through them, then you'll begin to feel this more sincere feeling that is closer to a soulmate desire. A true one from God's perspective.
So if we give an example, what would freak you out at the moment is a man doing his thing, doing what he wants. That would freak you out.
I had souls starting to disagree with me, which
Correct.
I'm taking as a good sign.
It's a great sign.
And I connected to this thing that when a man close to me disagrees with me, literally my life is at stake in that moment.
Correct.
Literally. I just it's annihilation just by
Him
his disagreeing.
So
It's
you
just
want
like,
the man's agreement.
Yes.
Desperately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if I don't, it was just like this feeling of like my life was literally at stake at that moment.
Yeah. So that shows you some of the emotions that are there, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good we could have this chat, girls. Thanks for
Yes.
your bravery.
We got more than we bargained for, which was great.
I didn't realise I was going to cause such a stir.
No, it was great.
We could have this chat as we've done many times before.
Or not.
Hopefully the next one's going to be different.
Hopefully the next one is with the two of you, but not with your not with each other.
It's
but
with a
your
couple,
soulmates.
but not with the...
And you're working out, how can I get rid of those other concrete blocks you talked about last time? Because we're just fighting and bickering all the time. I don't know why. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much.
It's a pleasure.
Good on you both for participating.
It's for everything too. You know, there's just so many things. Sometimes when I think of you both, I do get overwhelmed with this sense of gratitude or just the enormity of what you've done.
Yeah, again, get careful now. You're
Feels a
now
little bit
going into
addictive.
another addiction.
Yep.
Okay, that is...
You need to just let yourself feel your grief of gratitude by yourself. You know what I mean? We're happy to do what we do. We love doing it. Even if you weren't grateful, we'd still love doing it. Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, I don't think it's amazing at all. I don't, because the reality is these are the things you will do once you love God, once you love the truth. You know, you will want to do the similar things. You'll want to share the truth with other people, even if there's no reward for you personally. You'll want to do it because you love it so much. You know, so I don't think it's anything special. I'm just doing what I love. Does that make sense? So I don't. And while it has a positive effect on other people's life, well, God's truth has had an amazing effect on mine. Why wouldn't I want to share that? Is how I feel about it. So I'm not rejecting your thanks, but what I'm saying is that, you know, I am pretty certain that once you've gone through the process that I've gone through and come to know God the way that I do, that you'll probably have very similar desires and passions to share that with other people as well, even if it means that at times that nobody thanks you and you've got to say the same things to them over 5 years many times.
Yes, I hope that I will have that patience and kindness.
Well, the patience and kindness will be automatic.
Yeah.
Because once you've released the hurt from within you and you've given up the facade, it's just an automatic thing. It's not something that you have to manufacture. It's something that you'll automatically do.
So it's not willpower, it's will.
Exactly. Yeah, it'll be a part of your soul. Yeah, that's the beauty of the path that God's created. It's just an amazing path. It just causes real change and permanent change, And on top of that, it's just so amazing in terms of the benefit it has for the rest of your existence. Yeah. No worries, girls. Thank you for your time.
Must be nearly dinner time.
Must be nearly dinner time. So, guys, you ready for dinner? Yes. How have dinners been? Good? Yes. Yeah, you've been happy with them? Yeah. Awesome. That's good. You can thank the preparation that went into that from my girl. So that's really good, isn't it?
That was really my pleasure.
Yeah. And that is one thing Mary did not do with addiction. All she was doing was focusing entirely on trying to make it like so that all of you didn't. One part was to stop you from rioting.
I'm joking about that. I'm joking about that.
No, it was just to make sure that we could have nice meals together, so that didn't feed your addictions, but rather that demonstrated to you how tasty and lovely you can make some meals. Many of you have learnt to cook vegan food now, so you're making them tasty as well. But it just gives you an idea. There's so much options, isn't there? So let's go and enjoy some of it. Yeah. Cheers.